All right, Merry Christmas, everyone. It's December, so I can say I love Christmas. It's my favorite time of year. You know, I've been playing Christmas music actually since about November 1, so to give you an idea. But anyway, super excited to be here today. We're going to share with you today, what we're going to talk about is the flaws of the 401k. And, you know, so many people in our country are relying on the 401k or an IRA or their retirement plan. But I want to show you and do a little analysis on the 401k or the IRA so you can see, is it really in fact going to be your solution? So let's get into this a little bit. Here we go. All right. This is, you can see the title of my book, Why the Rich Stay Rich and the Poor Stay Poor. And we talk a lot about some of the things we're going to be getting into today. Here we go. All right, I want to recap the numbers on the wealth distribution in this country. And the point of this, again, is not political. The point is to make sure people understand what's happened and what's happening, and the real wealth crisis that so many people are in. In this chart, you can see that the top 1% control 35% of the wealth. The next 4% control 28%. You add that up, 5% of the people control 63% of the wealth. Add another 14%. We're at 77% of the wealth is controlled by 10% of the people. Now I want to give you some perspective on that. And I've done a ton of analysis on all this kind of data with respect to financial security, retirement numbers, and so on. In the 1940s, 80% of the wealth was distributed over 90% of the people. 80% of the wealth was distributed over 90% of the people. This problem, as far as the direction we've been going, dates back into the 40s, and here's my point, is how many administrations have we been going through in the last 75 years? And the velocity of this direction has only gained speed, and it's particularly gained speed in the last 10 years. Since the financial meltdown, this situation has accelerated dramatically, and it continues to accelerate. You can see the bottom 60% of the American people only have 12% of the wealth. A lot of people are struggling. Why people struggle to save? And most people, they know they're struggling to save, but the truth is they're really not even sure why. And here's the key reason, is that the rapid rising costs, meaning inflation, limits our disposable income, meaning the extra income that we have, and our ability to save. And this is especially true in Southern California because of what's happened with property values and rents. Over the last 6-7 years, real estate prices have averaged going up about 8.5% a year. This year, the California Association of Realtors projected about a 3% increase. It's actually been about 7.5%. Rents have been going up 5 to 8% a year also, depending on what part of Southern California you're in. So when you look at those kind of inflation numbers, and housing for most people is about 40 to 50% of their expenses, how do you keep up with that? And the answer is, it takes every dollar for people to keep up, so their disposable income and their ability to save is pretty much non-existent. So without savings, how do we create retirement income to pay our bills? Most people have the mindset that if you can't save, and I mean save a lot of money, they're just screwed, they're out. And that is not true. And that's why I'm doing this show, and what I want you to understand, and what I want you to share with people is, if you're struggling to save, it doesn't mean it's game over. And to the contrary, there is a real path to not just financial security, but to even wealth for even those that really can't save that much money. And the difference is understanding the dynamics of linear wealth growth versus exponential wealth growth. So I want to repeat that. It's understanding the difference between linear wealth growth and exponential wealth growth. Most of you, and I say most, 95% of the people only understand and know about linear wealth growth. Linear meaning a straight line. Exponential wealth growth is about magnifying your dollars where you're getting multiple growth rates on a low end. I can show you how to do this on a low end of 13, 14 times to as much as 30, 35 times, and do it safely and manage it. And I want you to think about that and think about that concept. But I'm going to walk you through this process because I want you to really understand the challenge that people have with savings and how we can solve this problem. Here's the math on why inflation will crush your 401k. What we're going to do is a scenario. We're going to take someone, let's say it's 32 years old. Let's say they start their 401k or IRA, they put $1,000 in. They're putting $250, saving $250 a month. The national average, by the way, is about $200 a month. In 30 years, at a 5% growth rate, and let me show you where I'm getting this number, is that when you're putting your money into accounts, there's management fees and so on, and usually you're looking at 1.5%, 2%, sometimes more than that. Right? So we're looking at a net annual growth rate of about 5%. In 30 years, we're at $212,000 in savings. If our expenses are $5,000 a month today, so this is taking their house payment or their rent, their, all their utility bills, food bills, fuel, so on and so forth. And this, by the way, is about the average monthly expenses in Southern California, about $5,000 a month. Inflation has averaged 3% over the past 100 years. Now, nationally, if you Google that and say, what's the national inflation rate? It's been sitting around 1.5% to 2%, and they're trying to push it to get it back up to about a 3% level. Once they get over about the mid-twos, they'll start raising rates. But that's not a real number. That 1.5% to 2% is not a real number if you live in Southern California because of what I mentioned before. When you have half of your expenses, meaning housing, rising 7, 8, 8.5% every single year, year after year, I mean, we look at 6, 7 years of this, that 1.5%, 2% is just not a real number in your life. In 30 years, look at the growth. Your expenses grow from $5,000 to $12,000 a month. This is the number one most overlooked economic issue for people when it comes to their budget management, is they don't have the awareness of what inflation does and how it impacts them. So you look at $12,000. Most people, if I was to take a survey and ask people, say, if your expenses are today $5,000, well, what do you think they're going to be in 30 years? Most people say $7,500, $8,000. They're not even close. I mean, it is radically, radically higher. So we annualize this, $145,000 a year in expenses. Now, the other thing I want you to think about is what expenses do you have right now that are not going to continue to go up? Think about that. You think, obviously rent is going to keep going up. You look at food, fuel, everything pretty much goes up. Here's the only expense that doesn't continue to go up. Is if you have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage, that's not going to continue to go up. However, guess what most people do? They refinance and they pull money out. So guess what happens to their mortgage? It keeps going up too. So this is the challenge. So with this constant rising cost, the disposable income they have is next to nothing, so they really struggle to save. But let's take these numbers. $212,000 lifetime savings, $145,000 in annual expenses, number of years of retirement, a year and a half. This is where the overwhelming majority of the people in this country are at, is less than 2 years of retirement, and why so many people are struggling, and why I'm doing this show, why I wrote the book. Because this is a travesty. I mean, this is a full-blown crisis. And I want you, how many of you worry about money? I know I worried about money. I had a friggin' heart attack 10 years because I worried about money. So that's why I'm so passionate about this, and I want to end this burden on so many people, and it can be ended. We have about 80% of the people that are really struggling to get to retirement. That's a big number. but it doesn't have to be that way. I've learned the path to solve that problem. We can't solve it for everybody, but I'm telling you, we can solve it for about 60% of the people. Now, you can see on my slide here, financial planners very often have been taught to use a 4% rule. Here's what the 4% rule basically does, is that you take your total lifetime savings and you live on 4% of that. So in this case, that's $8,500 a year or $708 a month. Now the obvious objective of that is to not run out of money in a year and a half. But $708 a month plus, let's say, $1,200 in Social Security. Let's say you're $2,000 a month. How do you live on $2,000 a month in Southern California? And the obvious answer is you can't. And so it means you have to work to the day you die. Or if you're lucky enough to own a property, you own a home, what most people do is sell and they move far away. They leave the state. Many are leaving the country because they have to buy a property one half the price of what it's worth in Southern California, or even less, to be able to retire. Now I'm going to get into the flaws of the 401k. You know, we've all heard about, from the time we were young, we've heard about saving money. And I'm not discouraging saving, to the contrary. Saving is really critical. But we have to understand the reality, the mathematical reality, that for most people, they're just simply not going to be able to save enough money. But while they're trying to save and using a 401k or an IRA or a retirement account, most are unaware of these flaws. So I'm going to review them with you. Number one, first huge flaw, is it requires far more money be saved than the average person can simply save. It's not. The 401k, because of what's happened to pensions, and back in the 50s and 60s, the majority of private companies had pensions. And this is why most people stayed with their company 25, 30 years. So they just locked into a company, they locked into a pension, and it's what I call autopilot retirement. And what's important about having an autopilot retirement program is that it protects you from yourself, because the reality is most people, they have impulse buys, they are not highly financially disciplined. So what's great about having an autopilot program where the discipline is built into it, and that's why the people that are government workers that have built-in pensions are in a great place. But if you don't have that, which is the overwhelming majority of people, then you're 100% on your own. And the combination of inflation, the lack of financial discipline, puts in a place where the savings that people are able to save is not enough. The 401k or IRA is just simply not a solution. Next, you can't access the money until you're 59 and a half without a severe penalty. So here's my point. You get laid off, you get sick, you need money, you don't have a choice. You have to access the money. You're going to get killed with the combination of the 10% penalty plus the income tax that they're going to hit you with on that. So what it does is, not being able to access the money makes you illiquid. And being illiquid, meaning not having cash available, is never a good thing. Number three is you do not have any cash flow until 59 and a half. Now here's my point on that. Is, don't you want help now? Why wait till 59 and a half to get financial help, meaning alternative income or an additional supplement to your job income? See, the quality of our life is not about being dependent on that salary job to pay our bills. Quality of our life is when we start having alternative income. So let's say your income is $5,000 a month and you have zero alternative income. But we start this process of getting alternative income, and every month or every year it starts to go up a little bit at a time, $100, $200, and so on. As the years go by, you become less and less dependent on that salary income, and we build this alternative income. And so as we're going along the process, here's what it's doing. It's lightening your load. It's reducing that stress. It's reducing those fears of money worries. It continues to grow, so it helps you in your 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. And you don't have to just struggle and struggle and struggle, saving what you can and having no help, and then at 59 and a half say, okay, great, now I can finally get a little bit of help. We can create alternative income now. And then the last is when you are able to start withdrawing the money, is you get taxed at the full personal income tax rate level. And so whatever that number is that you're able to save, the reality is that the amount that's there is significantly less because the government's going to get their share of it, and it, it's as significant as you know. By the way, they just passed the new in the Senate the tax bill, so we'll see how that ends up turning out with the House over the next probably week or so. All right, here's an article I found that from Bankrate. They call it the grand 401k failure. Given that less than 13% of Americans have pensions, though as recently as 25 years ago, that figure was 38%. Now you go back 50 years, back into the 60s, much greater than that. For millions of U.S. workers, the grand 401k experiment has been a failure. And there's just absolutely no denying that. You look at the number of people that are able to retire. We're at a place right now where 2/3 of the people can never retire, and that number's growing every year. How will seniors cope? Some expect to rely more on Social Security. Gallup reports, though, that was always intended to be a supplement, not a primary. So when you look at what the number is for Social Security, the amount you're going to get, and again, living in Southern California particularly, Social Security is just that. Supplement is maybe food money. So anyway, the 401k is a clear failure. These retirement plans are a clear failure for the overwhelming majority of people. But there's a solution to this, and I want to get into that. But before I do, first, the two most important rules of investing. 25 years ago, I was at an investment event, an educational event. Really bright guy shared this. Rule number one, never spend your principal. Now here's what this is what the super wealthy rely on. You spend a lifetime saving your money. Once you get your lifetime savings, never spend it. The plan should be to never spend it. I want to ask you, is your whole plan to save as much as you can and then live on it? I would bet you that's the case. At least 80% of the people, and maybe 90%, are in that place where they sit down with their financial planner and the entire plan is to save as much as you can and then live on it. You don't want to do that. And I'll get into why. The two most important rules of investing. Rule number one, never spend your principal. And rule number two is see rule number one. Do you have a plan that can secure your retirement without you spending your principal? If you don't have that plan, you need that plan because it's really doable, and that's what I can help you with. And we're going to get into how to do that today. It is easy to accomplish this if you know how. It's like everything. If you know how, it's easy. Now, every single one of you I know want to do that. You want to have a plan that you can accumulate, build your wealth, be in a place that you never have to touch your life savings. So if you never touch your life savings and you can live on the investment income, you're going to be secure because you're never going to run out of money, and you're going to have the quality life, and you're going to leave a legacy of wealth to your kids. Who doesn't want to do that? We all want to do that. So why aren't you doing that? Why don't you have that plan? The truth is because you don't believe it's possible. And why don't you believe it's possible? The reason you don't believe it's possible is because no one's talked to you about it. The financial planner hasn't talked to you about it. Why hasn't the financial planner talked to you about it? Because he's looking at saying, how much can you realistically save with today's inflation rate, Southern California's high cost of living? How much can you really realistically save? So he asks you that question. They do that analysis, and you say, well, here's what I can save. 2, 3, 4, 500, even $1,000 a month. How much is that? He works the math. He goes, in his brain, he's looking, he said, wait, there's no possible way in Southern California with the continuing high cost of living, there's no possible way that this person's going to reach a place where his wealth is going to reach a level where the earnings are going to pay for the constant rising cost of inflation. Therefore, it is not possible to live on earnings alone. You have to spend your life savings. Wrong. Don't want to do that. Isn't necessary. Don't have to go that way, but you don't know that. I want you to know that. I'm going to repeat this. You don't have to go that way. It is easy to accomplish this if you know how. Now, I was in exactly the same place you were, or you are probably in, when I was, my 20s, late 20s and 30s, We had no idea. And I was going down the same path, but when I went to that seminar 25 years ago, the guy said, hey, never spend your principal. It changed my thinking. I said, okay, how do I make that happen? So I started analyzing. I started studying, and I've been in the real estate industry for 40 years now. And so I started looking at the big picture of real estate, mortgages. I've been doing mortgages for basically 40 years. I've been an expert on finance at all levels. I'd invested millions in the stock market. I started analyzing all this, and I figured out the path on how to do this. We're going to get into this, but this is so critical. All right, here are the 3 questions you must absolutely be able to answer to reach financial security. Write these questions down. These are absolutely critical that you know these questions, and more importantly, you know the answers. Number 1, what will your expenses be at the time of your retirement? I showed you that analysis a little bit earlier. Number 2, how will we create the income, the investment income you need to cover your expenses? So we want to make sure we're on the same page. Not what your expenses are today, what your expenses are going to be at the time of retirement. So whether you're going to retire 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years, whatever that number is, we need to do the analysis. Say, okay, based on the lifestyle that you're living today and the lifestyle you want to live and inflation, we do that analysis. It's not very hard to do. And we say, okay, here's where you're going to be at age 62, 65, whatever. So we need to know that number, because that number is the target. That's the bar. We have to get over that bar. But we get over that bar not with you living on your life savings. We don't want to ever touch the life savings. So we establish what that expense number is. Now what we want to do is, how do we get over that bar with investment income so you never touch the principal, so you'll never run out of money? We need to know what that number is, how we're going to get there, and when. How long is it going to take? Is it going to take 10 years, 15 years, 20? How long is it going to take? In most cases, we can do it in about 15 years, not 30, 40 years. Here's the good news, that in a lot of cases we can get there sooner. It depends on where you are. If you're starting at ground zero with nothing, or if you have some assets. Depends on what your asset base is. But we can do that analysis and get to these 3 questions. These are critical. You got to have these answers now. This is like your roadmap. The destination is financial security. The destination is retirement. How do you get to any destination without a map? You don't. If you don't have a map, if you don't have a roadmap to get there, you're not going to get there. You don't just get in the car and say, hey, I'm going to drive to Wyoming and have no map and have no idea. You go north, west, south, or east. You have to know how to get there. This is the destination. We need to have the map, and I've got the map so you can know exactly how and when you're going to get there. All right, now here's what we're going to do today. By the way, you can see this in our movement in the Mark One Wealth Academy. We have a plan. It's called the How to Become Rich plan, where we do the analysis and we will show you specifically a plan that will accomplish those 3 objectives. Those questions, you need to have the answers, and the thing I'm so passionate about, I'm sure you can tell, but the thing I want you to know is, because I know you don't believe it. I know you don't believe it. That you believe, hey, I just got to save and put money in my 401k and everything's going to work out, I'll figure it out. Wrong. That's why so many people are so screwed financially. This plan is something I've learned over the past 40 years. I can get you this plan, get you on this path, so that you will know exactly what to do and how we can get there and the timing of that. But we've got to take action. Go to the Mark One Wealth Academy. Now, by the way, on the Mark One Wealth Academy, we have a retirement calculator. You can do your own analysis and it'll get you in the ballpark. Now, obviously, it is not specific because you're going to take some approximations on what your expenses are, but we can do a very specific one to your exact situation. Now, I'm going to do a case study. So here's what we're going to do. Here's what I want to share with you when I talk about a case study, is what the process is. We're going to analyze kind of what our typical client scenarios. Let's do the future retirement calculator. Now, this is kind of a quick recap of what our situation is with the typical person. Oh, is this fine? We can use this forecaster. Okay, can you blow that up so people can read that? Okay. All right, here is a scenario where the typical person that has, let's say, $5,000 a month that we used in our PowerPoint, and we saw how the expenses rose, over the the years. I want to share with you, if that person bought a property, here's a scenario where someone bought a property 6 years ago, and here's what's happened in the past 6 years ago. And this is, in Orange County, this is kind of the Joe average person. They bought a property for $450,000 with 3.5% down. That's an FHA, could have been conventional with 3%, 5% down. There's a down payment in the closing cost, so you can see their total investment was $25,000. The appreciation rate is I use 7.5%. The truth is, over the last 6 years, it's been higher than that. It's been more like 8.5%, but it's 7.5%. The value, the estimated value, is about $694. Orange County properties, that's where they're at. They're pushing 700. Oh, it's over 700,000, the median price for a property in Orange County. But here's the exciting part of this: is their mortgage balance is down to $382. Now, this is just their normal principal pay down. One of the things that most people don't realize is because interest rates are so low, the percentage of their principal pay down on their mortgage payment is over a third. It's a really significant portion. But look what's happened in these 6 years. They've accumulated $311,000 in wealth. That's a lot of money, right? $311,000, but it's been on autopilot. Remember I talked about it's really important we have a retirement plan that you can lock into, like a pension, that's going to get you to retirement with income that you can live on that will never run out. That is so critical. We can get you locked into this autopilot retirement program where we can get you to the alternative income that's going to pay all your bills without you saving money. It's an autopilot program. So here's the good news. We have $311,000 in wealth we've created. Look at our compounded annual return in that 7 years. 52%. You think the stock market's done well? Look at that. 52% compounded 7 consecutive years. That's an average. How many stocks do you have averaged 52% in the last 7 years? Doesn't exist. I mean, you can look at the stock market's done really well, but not like this. But here's the bad news. You got $311,000 in equity. How much income is it giving you every single month right now? How many of you have $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 in equity? And how much income is it giving you? And the answer is 0. And that's a huge mistake. We need alternative income. I want to share with you a strategy on how we can convert that into alternative income now. Wouldn't you like to have $300, $400, $500 a month now to help pay your bills, to start lightening the load? And then have that grow every single year. Because here's where we want to get to. Here's the number I want you to think about. This is why my retirement calculator is so critical, and you go use the Wealth Academy. We need to analyze, where are you going to be at time of retirement? So let's say hypothetically your expenses today are $5,000 a month. And we analyze, okay, what we did on this PowerPoint is we did a 30-year, but let's say you're 45. 20 years is your retirement timeline. So we say, okay, it's going to be about $8,500 a month. You need $8,500 a month in expenses. I guarantee you, man, unless you're saving like $3,000 a month, your 401k or IRA is not going to create $8,500 a month in investment income that you can live on without touching your principal. In my How to Be Rich plan, How to Become Rich plan, I'm going to lay out for you specifically how we're going to get to $8,500 a month in investment income, not principal. Investment income. See, if you have investment income of if your expenses are $8,500 a month, your investment income is $8,500 a month or more, now you can retire for how long? Forever. And your income just keeps going up and up, and we want to do a debt management plan to keep our expenses under control as much as possible. Because really, retirement's about two numbers, right? What are my expenses? What's my income? It's really no different than the struggle that everybody's living every day. But we want to get to that place where we can have our expenses pretty locked in. I mean, there's always going to be inflation at a certain level. But if our retirement income is indexed to inflation, and not just at inflation, but beyond. So if inflation's running 2.5%, 3%, your retirement income's running 4.5%, 5% growth. The situation's not only not getting worse, it's always getting better. That's the plan you want to have. That's where you want to be, and we can do that. So we need to lay this process out of how we can go to these steps so that we can have this retirement income steadily rising. Okay, now we're going to be wrapping up. We're at our 30-minute timeline, but I want to share with you a couple things. This analysis, we can provide this to you at no cost. This How to Become Rich plan. If you want to learn exactly, take your analysis. What it starts with is what we call a financial freedom analysis. And in this financial freedom analysis, it's really simple. It's what are all your expenses? We just detail them out. That's the first part. The second question I need you to answer, what are your current assets? And I don't care if they're zero, but we need to start, say, what do I have in the bank, in the checking savings? What do I have in a retirement account? What am I able to save? And we start with that parameter, and then we lay out a plan so we accomplish the answers to those three very big questions. Go to the mark1wealthacademy.com. You can run your future retirement calculator. From there, you can request a plan, and we can get together. We can just do a conference call and start talking about that, what that process is. You know, I want to share with you something. You know, I wrote a book. It's called Wisdom for Your Daily Life. And we're going to close with this. This is something that, for all of us, our lives and the quality of our lives are totally tied to what we value most. And so much of our society is it's ego-driven. You know, what we value most is, you know, our things, prestige, status, all those kinds of things. I want to share with you what we all need to value most. And what that is love. And this is the definition of love, because I think a lot of people don't really understand. They see love as an emotion, but they don't understand really what love is truly about. I've come to realize the reason we as a society do not see love as a solution to our divide and worldly problems, I believe it is because we do not know what love is. I will start with what love is not. Love is not sex. Love is compassion. Love is not lust. Love is caring. Love is not physical attraction. Love is commitment. Love is not chemistry. Love is faithful. Love is not a feeling. Love is a choice. Love is not weak. Love is the strongest force on earth. Love is not easy. Love is difficult because it doesn't walk away. Love is not brainless emotion. Love is wisdom for what really matters. Love is not selfish. Love is sacrifice of oneself. Love is not prideful. Love is humbly placing others first. Love does not argue. Love listens and asks what is the most loving solution. Love does not use cruel words. Love speaks with respect and compassion. The solution to our family problems, community, societal, or even political problems is love. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that resonates with you. And that's what this show is all about, is bringing love to the people, making this world a better place. And hopefully, I know we can change the tide of the gap between the rich and the poor and the middle class in a powerful and meaningful way. It can happen. I know the path. I want to share that with you. We don't need the government to do this. The government can't do it anyway. I mean, that's proven over the past 75 years. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. We will talk again next Saturday, 10 to 10:30. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.